Well, here we are with the final instruction, lesson 15, where we're going to marshal everything that we've learned and bring it to bear on a piece of Gregorian chant so as to shed light on it in order to sing it in an expressive and appropriate manner. Our effort is going to be somewhat like a young boy who takes apart his bicycle and then puts it back again. And when he does that, he knows his bicycle in and out. He knows what it can do, what it can't do. Or like a young girl who takes a blouse and with a seam ripper takes it all apart and then sews it back together. She knows then what the strong points and the weak points are of that garment. Likewise, we're going to take apart a text and then put it back together so as to know it more fully and to appreciate what's put into that piece. The manual gives an analysis of the communion of Christmas, Viderunt omnes. We're not going to go through that. We're going to take another piece so as to get more experience on how to do this kind of thing. Our piece is in fact taken from the office. It's the antiphon for the Magnificat at Second Vespers of a confessor, not a bishop. If you have a Liber Usualis, you can find it on page 1199. We're going to look at it here. You see, it's a comment of the confessor, not a bishop. And here is the little antiphon. The analysis begins with, first of all, a textual analysis. And it goes through a pneumatic analysis. We've done this before. You'll see the melodic analysis, likewise, we've done before. Rhythmic analysis and modal analysis. They're more recent, but we've done these all before. And then finally, we have to do a synthesis, put everything together, indicating some pointers on where to bring your efforts, what to do, what not to do, etc. So we begin with a textual analysis, and that poses kind of a problem because it's in Latin. Not everybody knows Latin, and I'm sure not everybody taking this course has 2 or 3 years of Latin under their belt. I don't know what to say. I would say that, first of all, just to be sure, if you had a friend or a priest who knew Latin, or a seminarian who was studying Latin or something like that, befriend him, just to be sure. You can also, with the Roman Gradual, the New Roman Gradual 74, it's blue, and the Gregorian Missal, they both, all of the chants that they give in the book, they also have a reference, a biblical reference. The problem with our chant is it's not from the Bible. It's an ecclesiastical composition, what they say. It was composed just for this. There you have to have someone to translate. It's not difficult Latin, but so what I'm saying is that just as a backup, you might think of that as some friend who knows Latin. In any case, this course is not going to give you any non-biblical text to translate for your homework. It's just you'll be running into other pieces when you sing Gregorian chant that are not based on a biblical text. So if you have the new gradual or the Gregorian Missal, also another thing you might consider would be purchasing an old missal. In an old missal, you can always find the chant and it usually has an English translation. This chant was translated in two old missals that I looked up, the St. Andrew's and the Baronius Press Missal. So let's go to the camera then to begin our task. Here is the antiphon. You see it's not long, and it was chosen in partly because of that. And the textual analysis begins with a translation. This man, despising the world and earthly things, hath laid up treasures in heaven where he is triumphant. And the manual gives a rather lengthy situation of the communion of Christmas Day within the whole liturgy of Christmas. The job of the textual commentary could be done a little bit simpler. You don't have to go into great big investigations. Basically what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, why is this text and this chant sung here? And try and bring that out. What is in the text that makes it appropriate for this, for example, communion or gradual, and within the Mass, for the feast that it's chosen for, etc. You want to ask yourself those kind of questions. And if there are other cultural things that might enter into it, for example, if you were examining the sequence of Easter, you might think of the mystery plays that used to represent on the stage, or actually in the sanctuary, what was being sung. These kind of things could be of some use. But the main thing is to convey an appreciation of what the text is saying and why it was chosen for this particular place in this particular chant. So by way of an example of a simpler kind of commentary, we'll read here, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. That's taken from Matthew chapter 6. This man, that is the saint, this confessor, this man cast everything he had heavenward, leaving nothing for himself here below. That's hath laid up treasures. And referring to the empty hands of Saint Therese of Lisieux, she said that she'll go to heaven with have absolutely no merits, nothing in her hands, but simply love. A poor man of the gospel, he is in reality very wealthy with the true riches. How did he stock up? Kundidit means to stock up, to store. How did he stock up these treasures in heaven, Chelo? By hand and mouth. That is, by the corporal works of mercy, manu, hand, for example, by burying a brother, or by the spiritual works of mercy, ore, by mouth, for example, by teaching catechism to children. These are acts within the reach of any Christian. But this one, hic vir, that's what that hic vir means, this man. This one did these things so well that he is a saint, and thus is proposed to us as an example. We sing of his victory over the things of this world, terrena triumphans, a real victory despite the apparent defeat, a wealth that cannot be lost, which looks like poverty. See, he had nothing down here, but he stored up the true what is true riches. And how happily this song of victory is continued by Our Lady's Magnificat, because this is the antiphon for the Magnificat of the second Vespers. So the next thing that we're asked to do is to examine the text in function of the melody. And so we look and we see what word is treated specially. Well, what we can see first of all is this is basically syllabic chant. That is one note per syllable. Then, but we see then on cello, it becomes what melismatic. That is, many notes for each syllable. See, that word there is being set out, being set apart, brought out by the melody. And ore also, with a little bit of a development. So that note is being, cello is being highlighted, and ore, in contrast with the syllabic treatment with the rest. And so that would show us where the cello is being emphasized, because it shows us where the treasures are being are going to. And in ore perhaps might signify a special development of ore, special emphasis on ore, on the more spiritual side of the saint's perfection, rather than the simply pure activity. What we say here is in which we can see ore, in which we can see the primacy of faith, prayer, and charity over simple activity. So there we have the textual analysis, translation, commentary, and then a commentary on the relation of the text to the melody. So we go on to the second analysis. After the textual analysis, the pneumatic analysis. You know how to do this. You've done it several times. There should be no problem. You take each syllable, and after each syllable, you, corresponding to each syllable, you name the neum that is affected to that syllable. So, for example, hic, a square punctum. Here, a vir is a potatus, etc. You know how to do that. There should be no problems. Don't forget your bars. And don't forget the double bar at the end. The next thing, after the pneumatic analysis, is to say the names of the notes recto tono in a very regular manner. So, something like sol, sol, do, la, la, sol, fa, sol, la, sol. And then sing the notes. Sol, sol, do, la, la, sol, fa, sol, la, sol. Remember that in these preliminary exercises, rhythmic and solfeggio exercises, you don't lengthen the notes when they're lengthened. So for example, you don't observe here the horizontal episema, here the horizontal episema, and you sing the quilismatic group all the way through without any lengthening. La, sol, la, la, ti, do, re, do, sol, sol. So that poses no problems either. You're used to doing that. The next thing is the melodic analysis. Again, you've done this very many times. You know what to do. You simply take each syllable and you name the notes that correspond to that syllable. No problem at all. The next thing is the rhythmic analysis. Now here, you can either photocopy the piece, or scan it, or copy it out. This only took about a little bit more than 5 minutes to copy out. I began with some manuscript, chant manuscript, but it wouldn't take any much longer to describe the 4 lines. Just to tell you, it's not that difficult, and it is instructive too to be able, or to have to write the whole thing out. You see things that you don't see otherwise. So the point here is to mark out the composite pulses. So you mark in all the ictus. Here's the first ictus is here. It's marked here. And all of those that are not marked, you mark in. There, this one is marked in. There, you can mark that one in. That one. That one. That one there. That one there. That one there. That one there. And these two. But the ictus are really in order to be able to mark on the melody itself, on the notes, their value in the counting. So since this ictus is in silence, the one is in silence and the first note is 2. And you mark in over the notes or under. You simply place the numerals so that they're easily identifiable to what note they belong to. So 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. See, this is a potatus. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. You're invited to make a little bit of a commentary on that. And here, what's noticeable is that it's, first of all, it's syllabic. The rules that would have to be applied here would be the rules for syllabic chant. But the thing is, all the ictuses are marked by the editors. So there's nothing to be done. You could say that in your commentary. One thing I pointed out is that normally you would expect that the ictus would go there, but the ictus is written out in the edition on et. And this is the way I explain. The only surprise there is that, for superior reasons, the ictus, which one would expect on the first syllable of terena, is knocked back to et. This launches the climb to cello all the more vigorously. You see, this makes a crescendo toward cello. Okay, the accent of despiciens gets the accent, that gets the ictus according to the first rule. Otherwise, all you have to do after the ictus that are marked by the edition, all you have to do is mark the ictus at the beginning of each neum or the long notes at the end, for example, this one and this one. The next stage is to count the piece with the rhythmic gesture. So that would be something like this. 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, etc. Then count the piece while reading the notes recto tono. Okay, so while I continue the rhythmic gesture, I read the notes. So the first one is sol, sol, do, la, la, sol, fa, sol, la, sol. Ti, do, re, do, la, do, ti, etc. Count the piece while singing the solfeggio. Sol, sol, do, la, la, sol, fa, sol, la, sol. Ti, do, re, do, la, do, ti. Then count the piece while singing the notes on 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You continue, of course, you do the whole piece. Again, for these preliminary exercises, the horizontal epizemas, the salikus, any lengthened expressive note, you simply count as a primary pulse. But you do observe the dotted notes and the double notes and triple notes. The next exercise is the composite rhythm. Here the task is to mark each ictus with its arsic or thetic value. We begin here in silence. The first arsis is an arsis. It's got to be an arsis because to begin you have to, always a beginning begins of any movement is a movement from rest to movement. It's arsic, it's energetic. So we always begin with an arsis. Arsis. Now the melody is going up, so another arsis. Now here, this composite pulse, you're going from la, sol, fa. It's going down, but it corresponds to the accent of the word despiciens. So the melody would favor going down, whereas the word would favor an arsis. So what do we do? A thesis or an arsis? Well, I chose a thesis because if we chose an arsis, then we'd have arsis, 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 whereas the melody is not going anywhere. And 4 arsis in a row without any corresponding climb in the melody doesn't make any sense. So we have to do something in thesis, and that one is the one that's got to be sacrificed. So we assign this composite pulse to a thesis. Here, this composite pulse is going up. It also affects the accent of the word mundum. The next one is it's at the end of the first incise. It corresponds to the final of a word, and it is relatively low from a melodic standpoint. So we give it a thesis for those 3 reasons. We begin another incise, so that incise has got to be arsic. Yeah, also the melody is going up. The next composite pulse is situated here. The melody is going down. It affects the final of a word. Both would have us assign this composite pulse to a thesis. Next, the next one is the 2 dos here, comprises the 2 dos, composite pulse. It includes the accent, and it's for that reason, in order to ensure a vigorous accent, we assign it to arsis. It's not going up that much, but it's mainly the verbal criterion there that makes us give that an arsic value. The T double note here is lower. It also affects the final of the word triumphans. There, for those 2 reasons. Third reason, it's the end of the incise and the end of the member. That goes all the way up to, from the beginning up to here. For all those 3 reasons, it's assigned a thetic value. Afterwards, again, divi has the accent in its in the composite pulse. It's also rising. There's a general rising in the melody, you can see. It's rising. Tsias corresponds to the end of the word, the penult, which is weak, and the final. The melody is going down. For those 2 reasons, we assign it a thetic value. Cello is the very summit of the piece, so that's given an arsic value. It's also melodically higher than anything else in the piece. It corresponds to the tonic accent of cello. All three reasons, for all those three reasons, it's given an arsec value. The next composite pulse comprises the clevis, do ti. That is given a thetic value because it's the final of the word. It's also going down. The melody, the next composite pulse comprises these two notes, the first two notes of the torculus. That's going up. It's just a momentary climb in the melody, and for that reason we give it an arsec value. The next composite pulse begins on, the 1 is here, and the 2 is over here on the other side of the incise. Now that note is the final note of that incise. For that reason, also because it's going down, we give it a thetic value. This note here is part of the same composite pulse that we put the undulation over that note in order to ensure an up pulse accent on con. Here, the next composite pulse is these two notes, comprises these two notes. That affects the two weak syllables, the penult and the final, although it is slightly rising. But the verbal criterion there prevails. It wouldn't have been very good to start an arsis on the weak penult after treating this the accent on a thesis. So it's much better thesis. We're on ore now. Ore, the first composite pulse, these two notes here, la, ti, is mounting, it's going up. It corresponds to the accent of the word, therefore is arsec value. The next composite pulse is 1, 2, 3 here. It's a summit of this incise, therefore the first two notes are going up, arsec. Manu, verbally, it's on the tonic accent, which would incline one to give it an arsis, yet it's so close to the end of the piece and it's so low that, especially with this kind of what they call a redundant cadence, both of the long notes should be assigned to a thesis. Of course, this one has got, for many reasons, it's assigned a thesis. The end of the piece, it corresponds to the final, and it's the very low note. So what do you have to, for this analysis, you have to go word by word, and for each word, you take each composite pulse, assign it a value, and justify your assignment. Why did you give it an arsec value? Why did it give it a thetic value? And when there's a conflict, try and express the reason why you, if, for example, the verbal component would have you assign an arsec value to it, whereas the melody would assign a thetic value. Explain why you chose one or the other. And try and, that is very important. If it's just musical sense, well then write that down. You know, if it's just your sense, but try and justify it as clearly as possible. The next thing then, what you have to do is trace the curve. And here I would advise you to practice beforehand. See exactly what you have to do. Especially what's difficult are these thesis to arsis. This pen is, or it's not a pen, a pencil is very helpful. Let me just point out, the more friction it gives, somehow the easier it is to trace a smooth curve. So I found this much easier to use than a ballpoint pen, for example. So you begin on the first ictus, and so arsis, arsis, thesis, 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 thesis, arsis, arsis. Here, you have to go around. Thesis, thesis. Notice that I tried in the chironomy to increase the level of the high point to the apex, the very summit of the melody, so that here you can see that's the biggest arsis. Also, once again, in order to make a smooth curve, there's got to be absolutely no hesitation. You should not stop. You have to stop, actually, because of the elbow. You have to move your elbow in the course of writing a line. But the least stop possible, the least stops that you make, the better you'll be. And also the more spontaneous your movement is. You know exactly what to do, what notes to circle, and what notes to go around, etc. So try and make a beautiful curve for your composite rhythm. That's the last part of your composite rhythm analysis. The next thing is a modal analysis. So to do that, we're going to go back to the piece, such as it is. And let's try and do it from scratch. The first thing you want to remark is that it's assigned to mode 8. And then the second thing is that it ends on sol. So, and you want to ask yourself, is the characteristic third there in the final? Well, it's not right there in the final cadence, but it's, see, la and ti are right several notes back. So it looks like that's a fairly clear eighth mode cadence. So the question is then, what is the final? What is the final? The final is sol. It's eighth mode. What happens at each of the cadences? Well, again, let's remember what we said last time about cadences. Are we dealing with simply a posing of the melody on a modal chord, or is there the characteristic third giving a clear context of a mode? Either it's the same mode or another mode. So that's what we want to have in the back of our minds. First of all, we look for the divisions and the long notes. The division, a quarter bar here, long note here. Now what, sol. The sol is the final of mode 8. Is the characteristic third present there? Well, there's la, but there's no t in this whole incise. On the other hand, though, there is the dominant, the do, which was sounded just several notes back. So despite the fact that T is missing, we can assign that fairly confidently to eighth mode, that incise. So next incise, it ends on T. Now what's happening here? Ti, do, re, do, la, do, ti. Is there something really being established as far as a mode is concerned? Well, no. This is simply a recitation on the do, and then T is also a modal note of sol. We have to know the modal notes of the do is the dominant, and T is a modal chord of eighth mode. So there, what is happening simply is we're posing on the modal chord of T, and that's what you want to say. It ends on T. It's a pause on the modal chord of T. Then the next incise ends on do. Now what's do with respect to eighth mode? It's the dominant. There's no real, see, re, re, do, re, mi, re, do, ti, do, re, do. See, it's simply establishing that note do. Do, that is a pose on the dominant of, there's no new modality being established there. It's simply a pause on the dominant of eighth mode. So you say here, ends on do, a secondary cadence. It's not a full cadence, and on which is the dominant of mode 8. And then finally, it ends on sol, a double cadence, 2 long notes, with a fall from the dominant, and the rest of the characteristic third several notes back. So we can assign this without any, without much hesitation to this mode of eighth mode. But it would have been perfect if we could have the fa just before, because the tetrardus, remember, is sol la ti plus the subtonic fa. That, when you have all those four notes, then you're sure that you're in tetrardus. And to sum up that modal commentary, we just made a little comment. Though uniformly eighth mode, here we go, we're reading here. Though uniformly eighth mode in the cadences of each incise, the melody is not without its modal development. The insistence on do and ti, on the second incise, do and ti, with, in the third incise, a kind of enthusiasm attempting to break into the authentic range. You see, the range of eighth mode is sol, re. Mi is one note higher. So there we're going into the authentic range. The enthusiasm attempting to break into the authentic range, although the dominant of eighth mode prevails there finally, that is, in the third incise, it ends on do. Re, mi, re, do, ti, do, re, do. Do is the final note that is affirmed in that incise. All that shows an intensive, but also a slight modal development in the melody. It's going up, and it almost goes into, it almost establishes itself in mode 7, but comes back to mode 8. So we just point that out to see that it's not simply a stagnant piece as regards the modal development. The last thing, putting everything together, is the synthesis. And here, you want to look to do your synthesis. The first thing you want to do is you want to have an idea of how it should be sung. And that, the analyses that you have done should give you some idea. You could also take a look at the interpretation of the neumes and the rules of style there in lesson 11. That will give you some idea of what the kind of things to point out in your synthesis. But basically what you want to do here is you want to give an idea of what things are to be brought out, what are the important things, and how to sing. Here's an example. You might find it's very meticulous, but this is not to give meticulosity as the example. No, the important things are the most important should be brought out. Yet, in order to give you a little bit more experience, the manual and what I did here are a little bit more meticulous, just to show you what the kinds of things that can be said. So, keeping an eye on the piece, the eighth mode lends itself to ringing out the triumph of this saint. It's known as the mode of affirmation. The chords of sol, ti, do, and re are used in the first three incises. Sol, ti, do, and re in the first three incises to raise the melody to the pitch of an acclamation on cello. Cello is the summit. Divityas cello seems to dominate over the whole piece. That's the high point. So going back and starting, that was kind of a general summary. Going back and going into the details, the intonation should not be given too loud so as to leave room for crescendo, because we've got to reach the peak here. The punctum on hic should lead into the potatus on vir. So sing it so you're leading into the potatus. And the two notes of the potatus should be executed with perfect legato without the slightest gap between the notes despite the interval of a fourth. It's easy when the interval is big to separate the notes. Hic vir, hic vir. Absolutely no gap between the two notes. The slight downslope on despiciens should lead into mundum. Kind of a valley. Without any acceleration, however, but rather holding back a little on the fa, here, the fa, the note before, so as to enter gently into the potatus following. This potatus on mundum has an epizema. The accent of this important word, mundum, is all the more highlighted by the powerful lifting of the base of this num. That's what that epizema would seem to indicate. Really give a solid base to it. There will have to be a swell on the dotted punctum that concludes the incise, so announcing the crescendo to cello. Already here, once you've posed this note quietly, you swell and you begin your crescendo all the way to here. Launch the first punctum of the second incise, ictus there should be incise, with determination on its way to the summit. This composite pulse, this one here, ends with a nice up pulse accent on terena. That third beat, up pulse accent. Though not lengthened too much. Drop back down for the final on the clevis, terena. Then rebound to send off another determined down pulse, another kick into the soccer ball, on the first syllable of triumphans. All the more solid as this ictus should be all the more solid, or the down pulse should be all the more solid, as it has to assure by contrast the lightness of the up pulse accent of the word triumphans, without any melodic elevation to help. Triumphans, triumphans. The second note has to be an up pulse accent in the shadow, if you like, of the first syllable, which should be solid. The T that ends the incise should be posed gently, then swelled, to indicate that we have to mount farther. Divi, here, manifests the same vocal challenge as trium. Plant your ictus so as to round out the up pulse accent. Here, up pulse accent on the two of a composite pulse, following on the same note. In the 4 successive square punctums on divitsias, there should be no hurrying, but rather a deliberate, even emphatic preparation of the accent of cello. Set off, and this accent of cello, again, we remind you, is set off by the melodic height. It's the highest of the composite pulse of the piece, by the intensity of the crescendo, preparing it to it. This is the end, the terminus of a crescendo that started all the way back here. And finally, by its melismatic treatment after the syllabic divitsias. This is all syllabic, and now it breaks into several notes per syllable. The final note of the cadence lingers a little on the do, here. The final incise prepares syllabically, rather like the previous incise, the climb on the accent ore. These are meant to prepare the final cadence by a drop from the dominant to the final. Okay? Ore. Do not rush on the do in the quilismatic group. There. And the one just following, this one. These are meant to prepare the final cadence by a drop from the dominant to the final. A full fourth. Otherwise, the arrival on the redundant cadence would appear abrupt. If you just went sol, do, it's not good style. The piece provides an interesting example of syllabic chant which blossoms out into neumes on important words. The whole antiphon should be sung with fullness and wide open heart, inspired by the saint's triumph. And then the final stage is to sing the piece. Hic vir despiciens mundum et terrena triumphans divitias cello conditore manus. There we go. So much for our analysis. All we have now is the excursus. The excursus takes us through several considerations regarding Gregorian chant in the parish. It tells us once more how much the Church recommends the chant as the music appropriate for the liturgy, even in the parish. Also, several stories and biographies are given. Pierre Carraz, who we've encountered earlier on, and the Gregorian days are meant to inspire us with enthusiasm for this thing. The fact that some people have actually worked and had success in this field and reaped some notable successes. And so we end our series of instructions, and we find ourselves with a talent in our hands. So much training. We're well on our way to learning how, or to knowing how to sing Gregorian chant. What is needed now is more practice, singing, actually putting into practice what you know from these instructions and these exercises and these homework assignments. What better place than the parish? Not every parish can do it, but it might be a good idea to consider whether this could be done in your parish. If it can't be done, then perhaps you could join a schola in another parish that's already established. In any case, in the gospel parable, the one who had the one talent and buried it in the ground was reproached by our Lord. He was actually severely treated. Here, the instruction is not meant just to gaze at Gregorian chant or to listen to Gregorian chant. It's not meant to be put under the bushel. It's meant to be used. It's meant to be used by singing, either singing in a schola that's already started, or why not consider starting one yourself? And the whole idea there is to reap the benefits, to enter into the spirit of the chant, which is spirit of prayer, liturgical prayer, spirit of Christian prayer, and finally of contemplation. The chant is translates into music an experience of God, and it's only by doing it that you will share in that experience.